you ever felt like someone or something is watching you, even when no one is there? I just moved into a new house, and every night I see a figure in the window of the abandoned house behind mine. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but now I'm not so sure. Has anything like this ever happened to you? Share your story in the comments. I'm curious if I'm the only one. Finding a house in a big city isn't just hard. It feels almost impossible. My parents had been searching for weeks, scouring listings, calling landlords, and racing to viewings as soon as new homes appeared online. Every time they found one close to my school or my dad's office, it was gone within hours. Every single time. I started to think we'd never find a place. Finally, after weeks of exhaustion and frustration, we did. It was old, yes, but it had a charm that made my chest tighten with cautious hope. High ceilings, wide windows that caught the morning sun, a wildflower garden spilling into the yard, and a creaky gate that squealed like a forgotten tune whenever it swung. I remember the first time I saw it. I ran my fingers along the wrought iron railing of the porch, imagining this could be the place we'd finally call home. But behind our house, there was another one. The abandoned house loomed like a shadow in our backyard. Its windows were cracked and grimy, some shattered entirely. Vines curled around the walls like skeletal fingers, and the paint had peeled away in jagged strips. Normally, I wasn't scared of old buildings. They had a kind of dignity. But this one was different. It didn't just seem empty, it seemed alive. At night, shadows slithered along its walls, and the wind hissed through its broken windows in a way that made my skin crawl. Its windows were cracked and grimy, some shattered entirely. Vines curled around the walls like skeletal fingers, and the paint had peeled away in jagged strips. Normally, I wasn't scared of old buildings. They had a kind of dignity. But this one was different. It didn't just seem empty, it seemed alive. At night, shadows slithered along its walls, and the wind hissed through its broken windows in a way that made my skin crawl. Worst of all, my bedroom window faced it directly. "Mom, I don't like my room," I said on moving day, dragging my suitcase up the narrow hallway. "I can see that abandoned house from here. It's creepy." My mom gave a patient sigh, brushing hair from her face. "Annie, your dad worked so hard to find this house. Stop worrying about things that don't matter. Help me unpack." "But I don't want to stay here." "Stop throwing tantrums, Annie," she said, firm but gentle. "Focus on what you can control. Make your room yours. Don't dwell on the negative." I crossed my arms and pouted, glancing at the window again. The broken house waited there like a dark sentinel. Every shadow seemed to crawl. Every wind gust made the floorboards of our yard groan. I knew my room, though cozy, would forever be marked by that view. That night, at exactly 9 o'clock, I lay in bed, staring at the darkness beyond the glass. The streetlights flickered, long shadows stretching across my walls. The wind whistled through the old trees in the yard, making the branches creak like arthritic fingers. And then I saw it. A figure standing in the top floor window of the abandoned house. I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. I blinked. It didn't move. It didn't even breathe, or so it seemed. "Mom, Mom!" I screamed. She rushed in, eyes wide, but when she looked outside, she shook her head. "Annie, there's nothing there. You're imagining things. Stop watching scary movies before bed." I wanted to scream again, but when I looked back, the figure was gone. My chest heaved, and I hugged my pillow as if it could shield me from the unseen eyes. The next night, I couldn't resist. At 9, I pulled my blanket around me and watched. And there it was again. Taller this time, still, unblinking. My stomach knotted. "Mom, Mom," I shouted. By the time she arrived, the figure had vanished.
"It's Halloween," she said, trying to rationalize it. Maybe some kids were playing a prank. I knew it wasn't a child. I knew. And that's when I decided I had to confront whoever or whatever was doing this. For the next 3 nights, I became an observer. I mapped the abandoned house in my notebook. The front steps, the broken gate, the staircases, the windows. I noted every shadow, every sound, every flicker of movement. I even started jotting down the times the figure appeared, trying to find a pattern. I avoided my parents as much as possible, slipping outside when they were busy unpacking. The house felt like a living puzzle. Broken floorboards groaned under my feet, wind whistled through missing panes, and the smell of mildew hung in the air like a warning. Each step I took inside felt like I was trespassing in someone else's memory, though I knew it had been abandoned for years. By the 3rd night, I couldn't wait any longer. I waited until 9, flashlight in hand, and crept out the door. My pulse raced, a drumbeat in my ears. The cold air wrapped around me, the smell of damp earth and wildflowers mingling with the rot of the abandoned house. The front door groaned like it was alive as I pushed it open. Dust motes swirled in the moonlight, floating over broken furniture and cracked tiles. I stepped inside. Silence, except for the occasional drip of water echoing through the halls. I climbed the staircase slowly, each step groaning beneath me. My flashlight beam flickered across peeling wallpaper, broken frames, and warped floorboards. At the top, the window facing my room was just ahead. Empty. I exhaled shakily, relief washing over me, until I tried to leave. The front door wouldn't budge. Panic surged. I yanked at it, slammed it, screamed for my parents. The shadows around me seemed to twitch, corners darkening, whispers curling around my ears in syllables I couldn't understand. My flashlight flickered and went out. I was swallowed by darkness. And then it hit me. There had never been anyone there. The figure, the shadows, the whispers, they were all my fear, magnified by the wind, the broken house, and my imagination. I sank to the floor, shaking, tears streaming down my face. Slowly, carefully, I inched toward the stairs and back down. When I finally pushed the front door open, the night air felt lighter, almost liberating. I realized something important. The scariest monsters aren't ghosts. They're the ones our mind creates when we're alone in the dark. The next morning, over breakfast, my parents smiled at me. I went into the house, I admitted, voice trembling. I wanted to see if it was real. My brave little girl, my mom said gently. Last night, I guess you were just a little too scared. We agreed to ignore the abandoned house from then on, and for a while, I did. Life returned to its ordinary rhythm. School, homework, dinner, weekends exploring a neighborhood. But the memory of that fear lingered, sharper than I liked. Sometimes, when the wind whistles through the trees and shadows stretch across my window, my heart still races. Sometimes, I glance at the abandoned house and imagine a figure in the window, though I know it's not there. My fear has no shape, no eyes, no form, but it stays with me, a constant companion in the quiet of the night. Even months later, the house remains empty. No footsteps echo inside, no lights flicker in the broken windows, no figure stares at me. Yet the memory has embedded itself in me. I sleep with the window closed, the blinds drawn, and I still sometimes pause at 9 o'clock, just in case. Because even when the world is safe, my mind remembers. It waits patiently in the shadows, reminding me that the most terrifying thing isn't the world around us, it's the fear that lives inside us. And sometimes, late at night, I swear I feel someone or something watching me. For a short stretch of time in my early 20s, a seasonal haunted attraction operated just outside my town. It wasn't part of any big company, and honestly, it looked like it had been assembled quickly. Temporary fencing, floodlights hooked up to generators, and handmade signs pointing cars toward what they called a parking area, which was really just an open field. A coworker from my campus job convinced a small group of us to go one night in October. There were 5 of us, and we chose to go late, assuming the crowds would be gone and the scares would be more manageable. When we arrived, that assumption felt wrong almost immediately. The ticket booth had no line. The employee working it barely looked up, like she was overwhelmed or distracted. As we approached the entrance, we noticed something strange. Guests weren't entering in groups. Instead, each person was being sent inside alone, with several minutes between them. No one explained why. We hesitated, joked nervously about it, and eventually agreed to go along. One by one, we were waved inside. When it was my turn, the door shut behind me with a heavy, echoing sound that lingered longer than it should have. Inside, the air felt damp and cold. The lighting was minimal, flickering bulbs and occasional strobes that made it hard to tell where the walls actually were. Actors jumped out from hidden corners, yelling, slamming props, and disappearing just as quickly. At first, it felt like a normal haunted house experience, just more intense than expected. But then the silence between scenes started to feel uncomfortable. In a narrow corridor, I felt someone step directly behind me. I assumed it was an actor trying to push me forward. I laughed nervously and tried to keep moving, but the pressure against my back didn't let up. Whoever it was kept pushing. Suddenly, we stopped. A door closed behind me. The lights went out completely. Hands grabbed my arms, not briefly, not theatrically. I twisted away and yelled at them to stop, assuming at any second someone would shout or jump out to continue the act. Nothing happened. No sound, no cues, no voices. I pulled my phone out and turned on the flashlight. I wasn't in a set anymore. I was standing in a bare utility room filled with extension cords, cleaning supplies, and spare decorations stocked against the wall. And a few feet away from me stood a man dressed in plain dark clothing, his face partially covered by a mask. He didn't speak. He just stared at me, then awkwardly raised his arms like he was trying to pretend he belonged there. Every instinct in my body told me to leave. I found a door and ran until I reached another staff member. When I told them what happened, they looked genuinely alarmed but clearly didn't know what to do. They directed me toward the exit and told me to contact management later. The attraction closed early that season. I later learned that another guest had reported a much worse encounter the same night. Years passed, and I tried to convince myself that experience was an exception, a poorly run operation, a rare failure. I moved to North Texas for work and made a new group of friends. One weekend in October, they suggested visiting a large, well-known haunted attraction. This one had sponsorships, security, and lines stretching around the block. It felt safer, professional. Before going, we drank. Someone brought edibles. I normally avoided them, but I didn't want to be the odd one out. By the time we arrived, my senses already felt dulled and overstimulated at the same time. Inside, everything was louder and brighter than I expected. Sirens blared, lights flashed constantly, fog filled every room. Actors shouted inches from our faces and followed us longer than necessary. My anxiety started building fast. Then we entered a room washed entirely in red light. An actor in costume paced in front of us, delivering a loud monologue. But behind him, near the wall, stood another figure, completely still. No costume, no mask, just watching me. My stomach dropped. For reasons I couldn't control, my brain convinced itself I was looking at someone from my past, someone who had caused real harm earlier in my life. My body reacted before logic could catch up. I screamed. Everything stopped. My friends laughed at first until they saw my face. When I pointed toward the wall, there was no one there. The figure had never existed outside my mind. I had a full panic episode and had to be escorted out the side gate. That night, I woke up to a vivid hallucination, a towering, distorted figure standing beside my bed, staring down at me. When the lights came on, it vanished. I stopped using substances after that. During the pandemic, I took a temporary job at a fall attraction. I wasn't an actor. My role involved monitoring crowd flow near a themed corn maze. One night, I noticed 2 guests lingering too long, stepping off the marked trail. Before I could intervene, I heard screaming that wasn't scripted. By the time supervisors arrived, the men were gone. The employee involved was shaken, barely able to speak. Law enforcement was contacted and the attraction shut down early that night. On my drive home, I noticed a vehicle behind me that didn't seem to belong to any staff. It followed me through multiple turns until I pulled into a police station parking lot. The car didn't follow me inside. That was the last time I worked anywhere near haunted attractions.